the biggest goal of tonight is to really get a really good understanding of how emotions work with our young people, but more so than that, to move that on to everyone being able to potentially choose a parenting tool for their own toolbox, their own parenting journey. And I think it's really important to recognise that everyone in the room here is unique. Everyone's got a unique journey with their young person or young people. We're all at different stages. We've all got whatever we've come here for tonight, but there's one really common denominator in the room, that we all really care and love our kids, and that's why we're here. So we can keep questions to the end, because sometimes what happens is I really try and make this sort of flow, and I try and cover everything in a manner that hopefully makes sense. And sometimes when we go off on a tangent, it gets a little bit tricky. And if we just try and keep it sort of non-political and about what we need to take home tonight. But I am really excited, and it's an absolute privilege to be able to bring these, as you can see, my thousands of resources and all the things I have swimming around in my head into something that's hopefully usable for people, because I've got this stuff flying at me. Heaps of resources, I've put a handout, I've put the slides on your, if you need to scribble, and feedback forms. And just as a bit of a background to these talks, I do 6 of these sort of talks a year, but the talks are dictated by what parents want or what parents are needing. So we have a series that we do over the years that hopefully your schools tell you about, but put it in the feedback if there is anything that you would particularly like. One that I'm introducing this year, which I can't remember what term I'm doing it in, but is the media and cyber stuff that we really need some support on. And all of the others are, a little bit about how to do sex education with teenagers, a couple more on emotions, vaping, alcohol, all really all dictated by what people might need in the community. So let us know what you like. Yeah, fancy little thing on. Yes. So I'm going to be talking about young people, but just so you know, tweens is a term that we use for 8 to 12-year-olds. Sort of in between the child and the teen, but everything that I talk about tonight is relevant to all ages of all kids, just different levels that they will be at throughout. But what I love about the tween stage, and I'm just hearing from you, a lot of you have got the tween. The tween is this awesome age where they're still listening to us, they still respect us, they have less influences coming in from outside, and they haven't got the raging hormones. And we've got this absolutely incredible window of opportunity to be working with our young people. Over half of all mental health conditions are diagnosed or start by 14 years of age. So this is our window to really start be working with our young people, so we're not going to be one of those statistics. And it's a really, really important time to connect and work with young people. So relevant to everyone, but really, really great for especially the tween stage. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to try and just bring home break it down to 3 really big overarching concepts when it comes to emotions with young people. And when I talk about them, I'm going to talk about the emotions, and so we've got a really good understanding of how emotions are working with young people. Then I'll take that into parenting strategy. So hopefully when you've got that concept, the parenting strategies that you might choose for your young people will make a lot more sense. You can choose them knowing a little bit more. And everything that I talk about with emotions leads on or sort of dovetails in with friendships. So as we can probably, it makes sense that friendships, the basis of all friendships is I like someone, or I might like someone, or I don't like someone. So it's all based on emotions. So all of what I'm talking about ties into the friendship side and relationship side of things, both with you and your young person and your young person's relationships and friendships outside the family circle. Just really quickly, just so you've got a little bit of an idea, a survey was done by the Van Alexander Shire Council back in 2023. There's about 300 young people between the ages of 8 and 12 who answered this survey. And the question was, what are the biggest things they worry about? And this is what they came up with. So I think probably most of us would be surprised that the first one was environment. I think I was. But what that does tell me is that they can still look outside themselves. It's not all about them. It's about they can look outside themselves. And they are really observing and listening and hearing what's going on around them. So that's something really important for our parenting journeys as well. Being ready for schools up there. So that's and you've probably all experienced that one, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Bullying. Just want to note that bullying is up there, but the cyberbullying's down the bottom. When this same survey was done with teenagers, older kids, the cyberbullying was included in that and was way, way, way. Was it number one, Jen?
No.
It was up there, wasn't it? Yeah. And then the making friends, and I always think with that one now, from what I'm hearing from most of the schools, and Katrina, you were working with this today in your school, it's not just about making friends, it's about keeping friends, it's about being a friend, it's about having a friend, it's about losing friends, it's about everything that encompasses friendships, and that's coming through really loud and clear from schools that kids are really struggling with that one. And then the body image ones, I just wanted to point out, that's increasing and going up higher every survey that is done as well.
And it's top 3 for teenagers.
Yeah,
Last
that's right.
year, we surveyed 12 to 25-year-olds. Body image was in the top 3.
Yeah. You can probably all guess why that might be part of it. So these are our 8 to 12-year-olds in our community, but as you can imagine, these worries are only going to get bigger, more complex, and have more levels as they get older and chop and change. But it's important to sort of put that into the picture. So here's concept number 1. So why are our young people so emotional? Why are we working with all of these big emotions? I want to share with you something that your young people, if you've got them in primary schools, will all know about, and it's this concept of the brain and the amygdala. Any of your young people come home and talk to you about this, because they all had homework after my friends would worry. They did, girls. Should have. So on top of all of these things, we've got hormones coming in, we've got lots of influences from outside. If we can imagine our young people's brains, all our brains are like this. We've got 2 really big components. The component over the top here, that's our thinking or our rational brain. That's where we do all our thinking from. Underneath that, we have our limbic system or our amygdala, where all our feelings come from. What happens with the teen or with a young person's brain is it's like this when they're young, they're happy pottering along, but every time there is an emotion, what happens is this kind of gets pushed away. And when this gets pushed away and the emotions get really big, any emotions, it's not connecting to the logic of the brain. So the 2 aren't connected. So when we're like this, we're happy, we're good, we're in a happy place. When emotions get big, this gets disconnected. And that's why we often say we flip the lid, and that's flipping our lid. But it gets disconnected, so we can't put the logic to the emotion. The other thing that happens on top of that for teenagers is this part, the thinking part of the brain, it's like it's been pruned completely back. So teenagers have this incredible thing where all logic sort of goes out the window, and they're trying to work it out themselves from everything that's coming in. So these 2 get completely disconnected. So we've got the pruning of this and then big emotions. And if you think about each age of each person that you know, young person, think about when they're little, we've got separation anxiety. That's considered a normal emotion. And then we might have this next phase where they're scared of the dark or they're scared of the lightning. Then we often go through a phase where family illnesses worry our young people. So we go through all these normal ages and stages of big emotions and big worries. The crazy thing that happens is that, I'll go back a step. What we do then as parents when they're young is we're holding them and we're trying to keep them safe. And we're expecting those emotions. We're okay with those emotions. We're keeping our role is to keep them safe and try and get this back down. So that's happening. The crazy thing that happens is that when this amygdala is getting all these brand new emotions like love, like jealousy, boredom, other worries, body image, maybe even their person's own sexuality. What's happening is this amygdala, as they get into their sort of after their tweens and in their tweens and teens years, it's getting all these brand new emotions that are being thrown at it that it's never experienced before. And the same time that that's happening is this has been pruned and there's no logic to put against them. So it's a bit of a crazy system that our bodies do. And at the same time as that's happening, this whole body's trying to work out what is this new emotion that I've got. At the same time this is happening, we often as parents sort of step back and help. It's time for you to sort that out yourselves, what's going on. So we've got two really weird things happening here with these poor brains that this has sort of got a construction sign in to say not working anymore, the logic. And then often when this is all pruned back and lots of new things are coming into the amygdala, as well as hormones, it's also the time that we often hand over a mobile phone and a screen. So you can see the absolute craziness of this poor old brain that's trying to cope with all of this. So that's kind of that's one of the big concept. Has anyone here watched Inside Out 2? Yeah. One of my biggest parenting tips is watch Inside Out 2 with your young people. This is where all of this makes sense. It goes very fast and it's a bit hard to get your head around, but it really brings it all together. Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2, but Inside Out 2 is about when puberty hits. So and when we hand that mobile phone on with a brain that's already like this and being pruned back, then on top of these new emotions that someone's trying to deal with, we've also got all these influences coming in of, the FOMO starts to come in, the influences start to come in, the comparing yourself to what your mates might be doing or other people are doing comes in. So we are loading this poor old limbic system or this amygdala up big time when there's no logic attached to it. So that's really my the sort of concept number one. And if you think about even when you were teenagers, when you had those emotions, or for example, maybe when you had your first crush, it was big. Emotions are never little when you're a teenager. They're always big. They're enormous because your body is trying to deal with it, this new thing coming in here. So it's kind of like we've kind of left our kids to try and deal with these big things on their own, which I think is really challenging. So not much has changed when it comes to the brain or these new emotions, but what has changed is all the influences and things that are coming into it for our young people, and that's partly why they're really struggling. So hopefully you've seen this. I love this concept. So this attaches to what I've just been talking to. This is a really great visual tool that's out there with every single one of us has one of these thermometers in us. It's our own sort of emotional thermometer. Now, we all the time want to be in the green. That's when our brains are like that. That's our ideal. And the reason we always want to be there is because it's much harder to get from there to the red when our brains are like that, or for our young people. But majority of the time, unfortunately, our young people and ourselves are usually sitting in the yellow. When you think about all the stuff we're trying to deal with each day, we're all probably most of the time, unfortunately, sitting in that yellow zone. So this is a great tool for both young people to work with and ourselves. So if you think about, I always think about this when I was a school nurse, I very, very quickly realised with all of the stimuli and everything that's going on in school, everything they're hearing, feeling, seeing in 6 hours, our kids 9 times out of 10 when they come home from school are going to be in the yellow, potentially the orange zone. They might not show that, but it's pretty quick for them to flip. I don't know if you think about maybe when you come home, is that the times when the kids, are most ratty? Then there's a really good reason for it. But it's also, if we come home from work, we're usually in that really similar zone as well. And what happens here is if we are in, let's say we're in our yellow zone, which might be here, and our child is in, say, the orange zone with whatever's going on, and we have a clash or we have something going on, these two can't help each other. One of you, at least one of you, and hopefully the adult, has to get themselves in the green zone so that they can then help the young person. So I think it's a great tool because when our logic or our zones have gone up into the red zone, we don't have the reasoning and we don't have the logic because these two are so detached from each other. So it's pretty hard to work with. So the question that I would ask myself as a parent is, what zone am I in right now? What zone is my young person in? And how does one of us at least get to a green zone for us to deal with this situation? And this is kind of what's happening with the brain. And what do you do, or what does your young person need to do to regulate themselves? There's another little analogy. I kind of like this one. I hope I can explain it well. This is my little play on words here, but hopefully it helps to bring all of this together for this first concept. So an adult's brain is like we are this person on the top of a mountain, and it's got snow and everyone's been skiing on it all the time. This is like our brain. And every time we have an emotion, let's say anger, we all tend to do the same thing with that emotion. Who would you agree with me? You do. Like when you're angry, we yell or we swear, or if we're sad or we're stressed, maybe we reach for chocolate. So we've all got our little habits that we've formed of when we experience a certain emotion. And the reason for that is we experience that emotion and we've learned one way to ski down the mountain. And that's like our neural pathways. That's our way that our bodies have learned that that's how I deal with this emotion. And by an adult, most of those emotions are pretty ingrained. So we choose the same path to get down the mountain. The beautiful thing about tweens and teens is when we've got this pruned, that's like a whole new beautiful dump of white snow has just been put on this mountain. There's no pathways there anymore. So it's our role, and we can help our young people to find those correct pathways to use when they're meeting emotions. So it's like this beautiful opportunity of a new path that we can help them to navigate. Now, even if your young person has already gone down a few times and not got great coping skills, or is having angry outbursts, or whatever that might look like, the path isn't deeply ingrained. It's much more shallower than ours as adults. So we can still work with that. So I think it's a really nice little way to kind of think about it, that we've got this beautiful opportunity, because this thinking, or this brain is being pruned right back to experience all these new things. That's concept number one. Hopefully that makes sense. Scribble down your questions if there is for the end. Concept number two is that emotions never stand alone. They're always connected to thoughts or feelings. What we often only see is the behaviour, thoughts or behaviours. We often only see the behaviour, but that's no behaviour that any of us ever do, whether we're an adult or a young person, is just a behaviour for the sake of being a behaviour. There's always a thought or a feeling underneath that. This is the concept we teach in mental health first aid to young people. And I think it's just a really neat way of understanding that if we're only working on a behaviour, we're only working on a third of the equation of the big picture. If we're only working on a feeling, we're only working on a third of it as well. So it's really working out as adults, I'm seeing this behaviour, rather than me trying to work with the behaviour, and I can tie it into concept number one. I know I'm getting complex here because the behaviour is bad, our brains are like that, so we can't work with it anyway. Where do I come in, and what do I need to work out that's resulted in that behaviour? And I think you can do this yourself if you like, as a little quick little exercise. So I want everyone in the room just to think of something that makes them happy. Think of a memory, think of something that makes you happy right now. Just think it, only think it. And then check in, how does that make you feel when you are thinking of that happy thing or that good thing? Now, I've already seen a few people smile. So I'm only seeing the behaviour of you smiling, but I have no idea what anyone just thought or felt. So it's the same with any behaviour we do. There is a thought and a feeling underneath it. So an example of this I had is my eldest child. Years and years ago, I noticed they were getting quite withdrawn, not wanting to participate in things, and just really, really quiet in group settings. And instead of me addressing that behaviour, what I did was really try and look at it from all different angles and try and work out, why was he suddenly becoming so quiet? What I discovered and what I observed over a period of time was that often he got spoken over when he was in a group setting. Often, when you've got the quiet person, that people just tend to speak over the top of them. And when I noticed that happening a multitude of times, I realised that he was thinking that his voice was not worth it. So therefore, he was then feeling that no one cared. The behaviour was withdrawal. Does that make sense to you? So it's really not concentrating on the behaviour. It's working out that the behaviour is actually this incredibly beautiful, even though it might not be beautiful at the time, communication tool. So that communication tool, we behave to get a reaction from other people. We actually behave to communicate that something's going on underneath. So it's working out, where do I come in on this? And it's a little bit like the iceberg one, that we only see the tip of the iceberg with what we're seeing. So that's another really, I think, a really great way to think, how do I need to hear the story underneath the behaviour. And there's always going to be a thought and there's always going to be a feeling. But the only tricky bit with this is our young people, again, coming back to concept number one, is they might not be able to work that out. So we need to help them to work that out. What is that those thoughts or those feelings? So it's us sort of trying to put on take our brain away and try and see the world through those young people's eyes. So that kind of ties into this one here, is that sometimes the emotion or the thought or the feeling isn't big, but it's repetitive, or it's in amongst a million other thoughts and feelings, but it's big to our young people because their brains work really differently to us. So what we've really got to try and do is not see it through our eyes, but see it through theirs, or see it through their brain. And that's when we come back to this. I've got this great saying, which I really love this. The purpose of emotions is to create motion. So it's us to kind of really try and think about, what is that emotion? Where's it coming from? And they're acting out things so that we react, but it's how we react that's really important. And that's where we've got to come back to our own green zone. So this is something like an example of this, I think, is someone, for example, being ready for high school or school. So we might, as an adult, automatically think, oh, they're just scared that it's a bigger school or there's lots of people there. That would probably be most people's first thoughts, if that's why they're scared. But for a young person, it could be the most simplest little thing that happened, 3 years ago, where someone said, oh, a teacher yelled at me at school, and that stayed in their brain. Or they're worried that they're going to get lost in the school. They're worried they're going to get their period at the school. They're worried that their friends are going to be in a different class than them. Like, there's so many other little things underneath that we need to bring up from our young people, because it's really hard for us to work out what is actually triggering them, because it's quite different. And then on top of that, have a little think again about the number of things that are coming into a young person's brain that they're trying to navigate. So you've got this Tetris of worries, and there's a handout out the back, which I can see most of you have taken. I think it's actually down to the 4, is the worry stacking. And that's where this comes in, that it might not, and they can't articulate that, but it's a multitude of little things that they're mixing up in their brains. This is especially true for this one here. This is more so for sort of anger or tantrums, where they can't regulate their feelings, and they're doing that, so we react, or it's a call out for help. So again, this is coming back to that zone, thinking of us checking in what zone we're in, because they're out of their zone, and it's really looking at that they might not realise that they're in the red zone. They also might not realise that they've got these big feelings or big behaviours happening. An example of this one I think of often is another one of my kids, for over months, was just becoming more and more sullen, more and more sort of, just that edgy attitude to me. And when I pointed it out to him, I said, do you realise how you just answered me? It was like, no. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting. You don't even know that you just answered me like that. He didn't. He genuinely didn't. So again, what I did was, instead of addressing the sullenness and the attitude that was just starting to really grow, was to step back and go, rightio, I could just easily blame that on hormones, and I could just easily just go, rightio, I'm going to deal with that. But instead, I tried to look at his life from lots and lots of different angles. And I did things like, when he was doing soccer training, I'd walk around and around and around the oval walking the dog. And I was just observing what is he like in that group setting. I wanted to see how he was possibly experiencing it. And then I got a few friends over and his friends were, their children. And I wanted to observe him in that sort of setting and seeing what he was, what he was like in that setting. I did teacher interviews, and I just wanted to gather all of this information to see what was underlying this growing thing that was going on, and to work out how he was feeling or what was going on. And what I realised with him was that he was never ever being validated. He was never being sort of nothing was ever boosting his confidence. He was part of a pack. He was part of a big group of things. And he realised he's one of the numbers. And I felt that he just needed to go, yeah, you are cool in yourself. And I didn't ever articulate that to him. I didn't ever sit down and say, hey, I've just worked out what it's all about. Instead, I just tried to boost that slowly with other things. And that sullenness and that attitude definitely dissipated. But then what I did is say, hey, I like the way you just answered that. So then I bumped that up. So that was a confidence one. So, again, it's coming back to that behaviour thing. But it's also, I kind of love this saying here as well, that there's something underlying. Sometimes it's really hard to work out what that is, but if we can do it, it's well worth our while. Sometimes it is just hormones, 100%, and sometimes you can just leave stuff, but it's the stuff that you think, no, I'm not prepared to leave, that we can work on. Someone once said, years ago I was at a talk, and I really love this analogy, having a teenager in the house is like having Uncle Jack live down in the basement. So Uncle Jack has had to come and live with you. He's the cranky old uncle that no one will take on. You've got a basement, he's going to go and live in the basement. And it's kind of like, okay, we're just going to deal with Uncle Jack until he comes out the other end. So Uncle Jack swears, Uncle Jack never comes out for dinner, Uncle Jack carries on like a pork chop, but we just deal with Uncle Jack. We don't try and change that. And some of the things with the teenagers and tweens, we just go, that's just Uncle Jack for a little while. We'll leave that one if it's not sort of hurting someone else. But do remember the snow and the pathways down the mountain, because those habits that they're forming are going to stay with them to their adulthood as well. So we've got to try and work with that a little bit as well. So concept number 3 is that every emotion that we have, there's chemicals going on in our bodies. So it's a matter of trying to recognise that every single emotion is attached to this change in chemicals. So not just this is happening. When the amygdala has big emotions, it actually sends out chemicals to the body. So if you think about this in a way which most of us can relate to, is like when we're worried, we all have a different symptom to that. So you might get a headache, you might shake a bit, you might get sore shoulders. That's chemicals that are being sent out from this feeling into your body to make you experience them. Now, those chemicals are good because they're telling us something's going on. But what our goal is as parents is to try and get those chemicals in balance, recognise them. So, for example, dopamine, and we were just talking about dopamine a little while ago. Dopamine is this great drug, it's our happy drug. But unfortunately, our brains also is a little bit tricky with dopamine. So dopamine is the one that when you like something or doing something or eating something, your brain sends out dopamine to say you like this, you like this, you like it, so you feel happy doing that. But the next time you see that thing, it then automatically recognises and sends out dopamine. Now, most of us can probably relate to this as adults, maybe with chocolate, for example. Even when you see the chocolate in the supermarket, you're like, oh, I want chocolate, because that's your brain sending out some dopamine because it's recognised it. Unfortunately, with dopamine, screens do the same thing. And what our clever people behind the screens are doing is they're recognising when someone stays on something on a screen for a period of time, it's saying, oh, this person likes this, I'm going to feed them more of that. So therefore, their brains are sending out more dopamine. So the dopamine then gets sort of released for not necessarily the right reason. So great one to have, but we've got to get it balanced in amongst the other things. The other one on top of that is gaming. So gaming, great, it's releasing dopamine. It's sometimes doing some great things, but what it's also doing is releasing this other drug, which isn't up here, which is cortisol, which is our stress drug. Because what that is putting us into the fight, flight, freeze mode, because that's what's happening on the screen. So it's sort of immersing us in that. So what we've got to try and do as parents, I guess, is how does your young person get each one of these and get them in balance, and what's out of balance if something's going on, and how do we get it back in balance? And there's lovely little examples down there, but each person that's here will find what their young person needs to get them in balance. So sometimes it's a really good question to ask yourself, what are these chemicals doing in our young person? And how do we get them back in balance as for our young person as well as ourselves? So there's another little way to look at this concept is this emotional cup. I don't know if anyone's heard of this one before, but this is a really similar analogy where it's about turning towards emotions, not turning away, and looking at how do we achieve the balance in the cup. So asking yourself, what's in my young person's emotional cup right now? Is it full? Is it overflowing? What's the mixture? What's the tea taste like? I haven't thought about that one before. Yeah. So what does it look like? And what do I need to put into that cup? Because all this has always been taken out of the cup just because of life. So what do we need to do to keep on refilling that cup so all those balances come into action? Now, I hate to ask this question, but who has seen the Netflix series Adolescence? Okay, this is an extreme empty cup. When you're watching Adolescence, that's what's happened to this young person. There is nothing in that boy's cup. And then it's led to something pretty dramatic and not something that's very common. But I recommend not only watching Inside Out 2, that's great fun, you can watch that one, brace yourself, but I think it is worth watching, every parent worth watching, bracing yourselves and watching this new Netflix series that's come out about adolescence. It's about a young person whose cup was very, very empty. And through various different reasons, all those chemicals were out of balance, and he did something pretty bad due to that. It's okay to watch, but I think it's worth it. Shannon? You've got to do it too. Watch it with someone though. Don't watch it with your young person yet, unless you're ready to. But I think it's worth every parent just having a think about what is going on with our young people out there, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and how that is influencing those three concepts that I've just spoken about. And we need to keep it all in balance. So that's the three big concepts that I just wanted to bring home. But I'm going to share with you now a whole bunch of parenting tools that I guess over the times that I've done research, talked with parents, watched webinars, gone to conferences, all that sort of stuff, I kind of handpick a few that I think resonate most with parents. So this is about your take-home toolbox stuff, this one here. This is about having a look, think you got like you're at a party bag stall at the show, and pick out what you think may work and play with it. And also remember that one strategy might work now, but we've got to move with the times and change our strategies as our young people change as well. So there's heaps of these in the handouts as well. So choose what might resonate with you or with your young people. So the first one I've got there is, and I've put some of these in the handouts, is sometimes having something visual to identify where you're at is a really, really great little tool. So putting something like a poster like one of these on the fridge, putting it maybe in your child's bedroom where they can sit and have a look at it and go, where am I right now and what do I need to do? And I love this little one in the middle where you get the little lids and you can put the little face on the little person if you want. So where are they now? And then putting this up almost like against which I've also got up the top, I've got that thermometer, that emotion thermometer. So what does that mean where they're on the emotional regulation thermometer? What I love about these is they kind of normalise emotions. Let's just get them out in the open. Let's talk about them. Let's not hide them away. It helps our young people to start getting the tools for themselves to start recognising where they're at and why they might be there. And then on top of that, not necessarily at the beginning and not necessarily with our really young people, but then looking about what do I need to do to change that. But it's about connecting. This is also about connecting themselves with an emotion and potentially then connecting with you with that emotion. So it's not something we're hiding away from. And it's also allowing, well, if you do use one of these tools, what's really important is to allow space for the story. It's not just a matter of I'm going to circle that one today and that's where I'm at. let's hear the story underneath that. So it's also inviting connection along with it. So that's one little tool which I think's a great little one. The next one I've got, which you might have heard before, is the Holt parenting theory. Now, I've added a whole bunch of letters under here. So this is like Holt is this tool that tells us to stop before we start to potentially intervene with a young person and their behaviour. And it's about going through a sort of series of really, really quick questions. So the first one they've got up there is hungry, H for hungry. So first of all, it's stop, which is, well, we've got to halt. But then it's like, do we need some food first? Is this hangry? So is food going to be our first thing that we need to address? This is your little one at the back, having part of that. That's good. No, it's good. Leave it. So, but it also shows that you care. It also shows that I want to give you something and I've recognised that this could be, there's something underneath this. It also allows for space for everyone to get this back down again. And it also allows for potentially a story time to that. So hunger, our first one. Next one, A, is angry, but I kind of changed this as, okay, are they angry? And are they allowed to be angry at whatever that is? We don't ever, ever, ever want to squash emotions. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. If someone's angry, let them be angry. Just it's how they do that anger that's important, and we're going to give them the tools, but allow that, whatever that emotion is, to come out. And then it's looking at, or are they anxious about something? So let's hear the story under that. I think under A is also a great one, is to ask them what is the best thing that you might be able to do right now for them. So it's giving them the tool, it's giving them the ability to say, this, I need space right now, or whatever they need. So asking in here and just holding that space for them. The L is definitely, I think, listen should be added in there, but it's not just listening, it's listening to understand, not to respond. So it's literally just, I just want to hear your story and I'm not going to say anything. So they feel they can just say as they need to. And then the last one I've got in there, I think you're tired, but also I think in front of, if it is tired, let's have a break, let's address this tomorrow. If tired is part of the picture, which with some of your young people, I would definitely, in fact, the young people, everybody, including adults, tired. If it is tired, let's have a break and then let's address this later. The other one is there, I think under the T, I would put take a break, take a self-care break. And I think that take a self-care break is definitely a very underestimated tool, that sometimes just removing yourself from the situation is a really clever thing to do. My mum, I never knew this as a teenager. Whenever I was a sullen, cranky teenager, which I was at times, my mum, unbeknown to her, did this one beautifully. And what she used to always do when I was really naughty is and it sounds terrible, but in her day, this was all, when I grew up, it was okay. Not that it was. She used to say to me, like, go and get the copper stick. Now, when it was to go and get the copper stick, this was a stick that we had in our laundry that she used to hit us with. Now, I'm one of 5 kids and we're all 18 months apart. I'm going to give my mum a bit of a break here. But what I didn't know was, first of all, it said to me, you've just crossed the line. I was like, okay, that was too much, which I needed at times, as my other 5 siblings needed. But it was also, so it gave her time. Her brain was like this. She needed the time while I went and got the copper stick to get this back down again. I needed the time to go to the laundry, which was outside the house, to get the copper stick. And I took a phenomenal amount of time to get the copper stick. I always pretended I couldn't find it and then I'd hide it. So it was kind of this thing of giving us both time to get these back down again, to assess the situation, to give a bit of space. And then by the time I got back, then Mum would say, put the copper stick on the table, so it would be between us. So she was ready to get it. But it was put down. So it was another bit of time that we needed to assess the situation. And we'd all possibly calmed down by that stage. So, yeah, unbeknown to me, however many years ago, 50-odd years ago, my mum was using this tool. So now I love this concept. I'm going to try and explain it properly. So when we have young people, we by default, and we have no choice in this, we are the managers of our young people. We drive them everywhere. We have to do the dinners. We have to schedule things. We have to wash. We're directing the team. And that would look different to however many kids that you might be directing. We're ensuring everything's okay for them. And we are the world's best managers, without a doubt, as parents. We're in control. We're directing everything. But when our young people hit the tweens and teens, and every young person will be different with when this is right for them, there's this saying that is, the more we correct or direct, the more we disconnect. The more we correct or direct, the more we disconnect. So this is the time, and however you do this, you can either announce it, you can offer it, or you can just do this. You sack yourself as the manager and you re-employ yourself as the coach. So it's like the suit comes off, the officialness comes off, your tracky dacks are back on, you're on the sidelines now, you're not on the field anymore, you're on the sidelines, and you're just helping to support the whole thing. So it's sort of changing your vocabulary, and it's looking at, how do I motivate you? How do you get to where you want to do? How can I help you? But you need to tell me how I help you. So it's kind of looking at that they are in control, but you're there. You're not running away. You're not very far away, but you're not managing it anymore. So it's a questioning of asking yourself then, when is that the right time for your young person? And everyone will be different with what that is. But I think it's a really great parenting concept of it. Am I being the manager here? Is this working? If it's not, do I start needing to be the coach? And sometimes the coach is much more efficient than the manager. Sometimes you've got to step in and say to the manager, I announced this to my kids when I became the coach, and every now and again they're like, I think you're being the manager. I'm like, all right, track your decks on. Now tell me what you want. So you kind of have to be reminded, because we're so used to being the managers. So that's another little parenting concept. Now, I've really just put this up here for your handouts. Really, I won't go through them all. But I think what's really important is that words are ridiculously powerful. And in the heat of the moment, what we say and how we say it can make or break a situation. So these are just really nice kind of things that you might be able to say in lieu of saying something that might not work. So really that's just there for, and there's other handouts there for that. And sometimes it's also saying, okay, this isn't working now, and you don't want me to give you a hug or a cuddle, but I want you to know my arms are always open. I'm here, but I know you don't want it right now. So that would be sort of in amongst that a bit more. So that's really just a few little tips and tricks. The other one, I think, which this is a really nice way of reframing our words, because our ultimate goal with all emotions is, how do I maintain this connection with my young person, and how do I have them come back to me when things aren't right? And this is another really nice way. And kind of all of these are just saying, I hear you, I see you, I'm trying to connect with you, and I care. So it's kind of just reframing our words a little bit. And then the last one I've got is, sometimes our young people, it comes out as a statement like these ones up here on the other side there. It comes out as, oh, it doesn't matter, or, the old I hate yous, or you're the worst. But that's their brains completely disconnected from logic. So even though they're saying that, this could be actually what they're meaning. So it's kind of our job in this one is to recognise that this is just their way of trying to communicate something to me. But don't take these for, this is actually what they're trying to say. So we've got to try and reframe it. So biggest tip I would have if these sort of words are coming out is letting them just sit with that comment for a period of time, however that looks. So it's then maybe saying to them, can you tell me what you really meant by that? Let them know it's been hurtful. That's okay. But then also sometimes you can do that later. So it allows them space. It allows them to recognise, trying to meet them where they're at, and it's not going to exacerbate that comment even further. So just be aware that they might not have the words yet to try and express where they're at. So I'm going to go through this one. This is my kind of explore, explain, empower parenting strategy. So step by step this is in any situation, friendship issues, emotions, it's stopping, checking your own emotions. So stop, and you can go through the whole if need be. What led up to this situation? Asking yourself, what led up to this situation? What is underlying? I'm seeing the behaviour here, but what is underlying that? What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? Whatever you do, stop yourself problem solving at this point, at the beginning point. It's going to do absolutely nothing if both people's brains are like this. And you'll get to it here if you do this, much easier. The next one I've got up there with the ear is listen. So listening with no judgment, ears off, not ears off, voice off, listening to understand, respond, really trying to understand where they're coming from. The next one I've got there is don't be an ass, don't assume anything. Our young kids, our young people's brains work really different to us. So find out where they're coming from first. Find out what they're thinking, even if it sounds ridiculous. We've got to meet them where they're coming from. Next one I got up there with the tick is to validate. Validate how they're feeling. So things like, oh, that sounds like this is really tough. This sounds like, you're really sad at the moment. Sounds like something. Don't compare whatever you do. So, I remember when this happened to me and I felt like this. They actually don't really care at this point anyway. So validation gives you that connection, and it's simply saying to them, I see you, I hear you, and stopping there and nothing more. Next one I got up there is empathy. Now, your brain needs to be like this to give empathy. You can't give empathy when your little thumb is up here. So empathy is really different to sympathy. So it's about putting yourself in their shoes as opposed to feeling for them. It's much, much harder to do to give empathy than it is to give sympathy. It's really trying to work out where are they right now. Next one I've got there's a little toolbox. Now I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail then, but it's really thinking about what have you got in your toolbox right now to help them in this moment. Next one I've got there's space. So this is space, like I just said to my mum with the copper stick, that was space that we all needed. So it's what space do you need to manage your emotion and so they can manage their emotions? What does that actually look like? There's a little bit of time out. Next one I got there is the invitation. So if we just say, hey, we need to talk about this, as opposed to giving them an invitation of saying, like, would you like to hear what I think about this situation? Because they've got to stop and they've got to answer us. And if they answer us, then they're much, much more open to what we're about to say. But if you say, look, I reckon this is what's going on here, we haven't offered the invitation, they might not be ready for that yet. So do the invitation first. Would you like to hear what I've got to say about this? So, and then respect that answer. And if they can't, they say, no, I don't, that means that lid's still really flipped and they're not ready to hear anything. So then say, I'm okay with that. A couple of hours, should we check back in again? Or tomorrow, should we check back in again? Whatever that looks like, depending on the situation. But don't override them if no one knows the answer because they're not ready to hear it. But yeah, the invitation. And then it is breaking it down. So breaking a problem down into smaller parts. So if, for example, a young person says, look, everyone hates me, let's break that down. Who's everyone? And then break it down into smaller pieces for them to work out and work through. So this is a nice little kind of like just step by step. You have to play a game when you get home and when you see the slides and try and work out what anyone means though. All right, I'm going to keep ploughing through. Oh, no, wrong way. So the PYB, parenting strategy, this is pick your battles. So this parenting strategy is looking at, you can't take all the battles on of young people. What are your most important ones for your family life, and for that young person? So what is most important? And it's really kind of going through, and it'll be different for everybody what that battle is. And I'll give you an example of one of the battles that I completely stopped in my family, and I think it was a good one to stop. When I stopped asking them to clean their bedrooms. You've got a losing battle anyway, right? So I said to them, I am not going to, I want you to have a clean room. But it is no use me now because it's a daily nag and you're not going to win it. But my boundary on that was as long as it's not grotty. If it's dirty, that's a different thing to just having all your crap all over the floor. So no food, whatever that looks like. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm having this battle every day. Is it actually going to change anything? So pick what's important to you because you definitely can't do all of them. There's too many. And they'll look different for everyone. This is the next little strategy. So I love this little one. You've got to feel it to heal it, name it to tame it, and share it to bear it. And this one here is teaching our young people it's always giving them the tools. So it's giving them space, giving them time to actually feel that emotion. Don't squash those emotions because we've got to recognise what it is and they've got to learn to recognise what it is. They've got to learn to recognise where they are on that thermometer. They've got to learn to recognise where their brain is at. And so that's that, okay, where am I? What am I doing? So it's figuring that if we can leave them some space, and this is usually a little bit later on in life, this is definitely probably in the teens times, is feeling it to heal it. Let them feel it, let them get it out. And then see if they can start to name it. Because when we name something, it's easier to tame something. It's kind of going, okay, what are my strategies here when I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling? And then it's so much easier then to share it with someone, and what you're going to really hope is you're the person they're sharing it with because you've allowed them and you're not doing it judgmentally. So that's another little strategy to really start to teach our young people to not be scared of their feelings, and we're not going to be scared of them. We're going to embrace that feeling because we're going to learn from it. So, yeah, that's another little sort of strategy. Now, this one here is when things are good. So when things are good, it's an awesome time to look at family meetings, but not a family meeting with no agenda. So it's a fun night. So if it's going to have an agenda, then it's open to everybody. It's not you setting the agenda saying, right, we're doing this tonight and this is what we're going to talk about and I'm getting sick of this happening and you're not doing your jobs. Then you're not you setting the agenda. The agenda is an open agenda. It can be out on the table for a while and everyone can put what they want to talk about. But you do need to set some boundaries. So it might be a case of, the old pass the talking stick or whatever that is so everyone listens and everyone respects each other. But keep it a really safe, but make it a positive occasion. So it's bringing out the popcorn, bringing out sweets. What does everyone want to eat? Let's do a night where we are going to go around and we're going to find out where everyone's at in this family or under this roof. So this is really, really big for getting that connection. And if our young people know that this is coming or this is something once a month or something, they might just wait for that occasion to be able to bring something up. They know it's coming. Another, if this isn't available to people, and it's not available to a lot of families, it's then looking about then how do you get that connection in another way? So one of my really good friends, even her kids right up to when they've left home, so 2 kids leave home now, every single night she sat on the bed with them and she just chatted to them. She said, and her was, tell me one good thing about the day, one bad thing about the day, one thing you learned today. So it was just kind of this connection that she had, but her young people knew that every night she would be there so they could wait for that occasion. So it might be also looking at how else do I connect with my young person. So one of the best times is in the car. Parallel conversations are the pads, walking alongside them, walking the dog. You don't have to do any eye contact. That person feels safe, but they also know that the car drive's finishing soon. So you can bring it up them knowing that you're not going to keep blethering. It might be doing a board game. It might be, offering to make a milkshake. It could be watching a movie. It's just something without an agenda but allows you that connection. It's sort of very similar to this. This could be a whole family one, but there could be just a one-on-one that you've got. Have a good time, Stu. Every time you stand there, I get worried. Okay. This is another really great thing to think about, and this will be quite individual to people, but it's another little game you'll have to play at home. So what's in your toolbox to help your young person? So these are things that I think every single one of us have got in our toolbox. The first one we've got in our toolbox is our eyes. Our eyes send connection. Our eyes send safety, and they send signals of caring. but they are also, so we can look at body language, we can look at our own body language. Our eyes are sort of this tool we've got to assess the situation, but also give some signals out. The next one we've got is our voice. So our voice is a tool that can make or break situations. So, you know, that's, again, we've got to get our connection back with our brain and get into our zone before our voice can be caring. So our voice can send signals of safety. Our voice can send signals of caring. And those words that I had up there before were great. So it also sends signals of empathy. And if someone, and you know yourself, if someone just sits beside you and kind of just looks at you, you're kind of like, okay, it's going to be all right. So even that in itself, just being beside someone, but also be really aware, especially if you've got really little people, that we've got to get to their level. So, you know, we're 4 times the size of our little people. So standing above people is not a sign of safety. It's getting to their level, which is really important. So it's just sort of like getting that all calmed down. The next one we've got is our heart. So with this one, I don't know if anyone has heard of the term the rupture and repair. So if we stuff up, which we inevitably will, it's learning to say you didn't handle something really well and that you're sorry and that you'll try and do better next time. And that is really powerful for our young people, but it's also really powerful for them to model off themselves. Time is our next one, and I always think this one is just ridiculously true. The number of times that I'll be sitting and just ready to go to bed, which is not very late at all for me, but that's when my young people want to talk. But there's actually a chemical reason for that. Young people's hormone levels all sort of peak, and that's why they're all the most energetic and the nicest people in the world at night time and the grumpiest in the morning. There's actually a chemical reason for that. So that's when they want to talk to us. So it's kind of looking at when is the best time for your young person to talk, and it's usually 9 times out of 10 never in the morning. But also, don't do as my poor mum. My bag mum in these talks, but my mum used to always put an ultimatum on my. She's like, right, you are going to sit here for 10 minutes until you tell me what's going on. And of course, as soon as she put a time limit on me, it was like, I'll have to sit here for 10 minutes and I won't take it, and then you'll let me go. So putting time limits on things is not great, but giving options. And we go back to when they were really little, of giving 2 options. You don't want to talk now, but can we try to get in half an hour? Or can we try it again tomorrow at times is part of the thing. So working out your timings if it's not right for you. The next one I've got up there is brain break. Really, really important to have a thinking about if you can give a mental separation from a problem and an emotion. What do those brain breaks look like? And most schools are awesome. Kids know about brain breaks. Most schools do amazing brain breaks. So it's looking about what works for them. And sometimes that's like, okay, let's go and kick the footy at the oval for a little while and then come back and then let's have a look at this. And what that's doing, go back to the beginning of the talk, is those chemicals that have gone right out of balance with big emotions, we're getting them back into gear again. So it's looking at things like what can we do to put a bit of a space between what's happening here. And that'll look different for everyone, but it's something really good to practice brain breaks. The other one that I've got up there is their body. Their body is an amazing tool. And one of the best things we can do, I think, especially when it comes to anxiety, if kids are experiencing big anxiety, is to, tensing the whole body and then releasing it. And again, unbeknown to us, what's happening inside the brain that might be like this, it's coming down like this. We can't see that, but that's what that whole body tensing is doing. And again, it's starting to play with those chemicals that are all a bit out of whack. So using their body as a tool, it might just be like, let's go for a sprint down the road and come back again. When I was a school nurse, I actually purchased a treadmill. And I had a treadmill in my clinic, and I used to get some of the kids who experienced panic attacks on the treadmill. And they just went on that treadmill as fast and as hard as they could, and they came off and they felt heaps better. So what is it for that young person? Sometimes just, the mandala drawings, something like that, just so they can change it all around. Then the other thing I've got up there, I think we've always got numbers as our tool. We often forget our words, and often our young people have issues with our words. So sometimes it's okay, tell me where you are on this scale. And if you tell me you're a 5 right now or a 2 right now, what can we do with a coach, not the manager. What can we do to get you to, if we're a 2, how do we get you to 3? What do you reckon? What are our options? So sometimes that's a much easier tool to use than words, using our numbers. But again, trying to be a coach, not the manager of it. All right. This is really just for you in your handouts, but if they don't want to talk, let them know it's okay, not now, but you're available, but also make sure you make yourself available. And it's a bit of I don't know what you guys all think now, but I am starting to sense that if someone is on a phone, we're not available anymore. I used to get interrupted all the time on my phone, but I think now what I'm seeing is I see young people go, or people come into my office, and if I'm on my phone, they'll go, oh, you're on the phone. It's like, even if it's just looking at a screen. So that's a disconnect. That's them saying you're not available to me. So it's how do you make yourself look available? So one of the young people back at Mondo Lounge days, I asked a whole bunch of young people what would be some great strategies. And a couple of their strategies were putting a ribbon on their door, one person said. So I put a ribbon on my door, and that tells you that I'm ready to talk. You can talk to me now. Another one was saying that, putting a magnet on the fridge that they could turn upside down or in a certain way was like, that tells you I'm ready to talk now. So you've got to just keep an eye on the magnet. Another young person said to me they really loved the good cop, bad cop parenting situation. And that kind of helped them to go, yep, you actually said, I'm going to be the good cop now, but mum's coming in a minute, she's going to be the bad cop, whatever that looked like. And that actually was something for them to go, rightio, then you're going to tell me crappy stuff, but the next one's coming in to say, rightio, what do we need to do about this? So you can sort of that yin yang with it. So some of these things are available to us. The other one I think is really important is finding other people that are out there that might be your role models for your young people, that might be able to give the same message as you. So it doesn't have to always come from you, and you might not be the right person. I certainly, when I grew up, my parents weren't the right people to talk to. We were on very different levels, and that was okay. There was just other people that were right for me. So I think it's also looking at who is the right person for your young person. All right, we're almost there, but this is really important. Big emotions, we need big boundaries. So what are your boundaries in your homes, and what is not acceptable behaviour? So 100%, no matter when it is, physical violence is a non-negotiable behaviour. So the other one is try not to take things personally, but I think it's really, really important that if our young person says something hurtful to us, that we let them know that that hurt us. I don't think we should be letting that go. It's not good, but they need to know at some stage, but probably not at that point in time. Honesty is the bottom line. I've always said to my kids that lying is not an emotion. Lying is an action. And lying is really hard to deal with. It evokes emotions, but it's not an emotion in itself. So there's no excuse for lying. So it's a big lesson to learn that lying is not an emotion, but it will evoke a big emotion from an adult. And there's always got to be consequences to that. Walking away, I think, is a really, really powerful tool. Sometimes it's just, no, I'm walking away from this situation. And that's telling them this is not acceptable right now, as long as they're safe, obviously. Saying sorry, like I said before, a really good model to have. And then sometimes it's looking at that situation, the next day or a couple of hours' time. But I think setting boundaries, if you do have someone who's erupting a little bit, is really important. So super important. There was a survey done years ago, which was this most fascinating survey of all these 25-year-olds. And they went back through and said, what is the most important thing from the message you'd like to give to parents? And it was enormous. It was almost like, 25 out of the 25 said the fact that they never gave up on me. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever had this thing. I know I have done this when there's been something unacceptable and I've just been like, and walked away. And then I've gone, oh, crap. The message that I just gave to that young person was, I've just given up on them. And you've got to say to them, you've really disappointed me right now. I'm really angry, but I'm still here. just let them know, because as soon as they think you've given up on them, they've got nobody. We are still their rocks. So anger and disappointment and lying, they're all really, really hard emotions to love. But I think it's really important that we let them know, but preempt our walking away with, this doesn't change my love for you, but I'm still pretty pissed off with you. So I think that's a really important message that these young people gave us. So just always remembering, we always say this one, that we're on a 24-hour clock. We can't expect to do any of these things without recharging our own batteries and looking after our own emotional needs. So it's really looking at what fills your battery as well, and how do you keep that 100% charge. And if it's not, how do you do that? And my very large piece of advice is, if you haven't got a dog and you can handle having a dog in your house, a dog gives you unconditional love when you've got teenagers. That's a little picture of my dog. And I know sometimes I'm just like, it's okay, I've got you. No matter what happens, your dog's going to do something. Yeah. Really big question. And I think this is, Simon, we talked about this the other day. What is your superpower as your parent, as a parent? And we've all got a superpower. And it's kind of working out what is yours and how do you use it. And Simon, for example, said to me the other day, his was being able to be silent. And that is a massive superpower to have for people. So I think I was going to tell you a story of your amazing parenting the other day, Simon, but I think I'm going to just see if I've got time at the end, because I can see this, we're getting late. But it's having a little think about, in a situation, what do you do well, and keep doing that really well. If I've got time to tell you a story, I will. Just want to quickly get onto the friendship stuff. But the reason I've left the friendship stuff at the end is because what I've spoken about with all of this emotion stuff ties in with this. It answers almost all our questions when it comes to friendships. So like I said, relationships are all based on emotions. That's what drives us. That's what pulls us away. So, but with friendships, those emotions are mixed with other people's emotions. That's the big, big difference, that we're dealing with other people's emotions. And especially if we like people, then we're also carrying their emotions and trying to analyse them as well. So I'm going to just go through a few little tips with friendships. But I think it's really important that there's never one correct answer when it comes to friendships. They're always complex. But don't ever think as a parent that you can't help a young person's friendship. Even though it's really hard to get your head around young people's friendships, you can still be a part of it. So this is something to just keep in mind when it comes to friendships and relationships. All of our young people's, just like emotions, there's underlying stuff going on with all relationships and friendships. So every single relationship has got the influence of media, of Insta, of YouTube, of TikTok, hormones. They're going to play a really big part in emotions as well. The peer group pressure is a normal and natural part of every relationship. And it should be. It's kind of good. It's helping our young people to grow and get that logic in their brain, but it's having the ability to recognise that it's peer group pressure. They've got their feeling out of control is increased. So we've got that feeling of not being in control of things because of this poor old brain that's been pruned back. It is coming into friendships, but it's not just them anymore. It's all their friends have got the same thing going on with their brain. So that's a really tricky one. New emotions coming in, really, really tricky as well. And like one of the things that I do in the preparation for puberty course is I do these scenarios with all of these grade 5, 6 kids. I give them all these scenarios and I say to them, how would you solve, or is that a red flag behaviour, a green flag behaviour, an orange flag behaviour? And I really like introducing the concept of an orange flag behaviour, because it's a behaviour that is to not ruin a friendship, but to be aware of. That it's there, it might not be bad, but it's to be aware of. And they always say straight away, it's a red flag behaviour, 100%, whatever it is. And then what I do when I'm doing that scenario with them is then I try and throw a few curveballs in there and say, oh, what about this? Or what if this was happening with this person? And it makes them think outside the box a little bit, because young people have sort of one way of thinking, and as soon as a couple of people in the group think the same way, then everyone wants to think that same way because they don't want to be different. And often they've got very, very one vision on things because it's something they've learnt in the past. So throw through a few little sort of extra bits at them to make them have a think about something. But also, whenever we're talking about friendships, is have them look at their own behaviours in that friendship, because often kids are really, really good at looking at everyone else's behaviours, but forget that theirs is actually part of that scenario. So sometimes I will say to the kids, and they might yell and say, well, it's red flag, it's red flag, and another kid's saying, no, it's green. And then I'll say, so what sort of behaviours are you two doing right now? Because they're interrupting each other and yelling. So it's like, we're doing red flag behaviours. I just say, yeah. So we've got to look at that as well when we're looking at friendships. I really just love this really simple diagram. I think it's great for parenting. If we're not getting anywhere, if we're going round and round and round trying to do the same thing, then we need to change our way. But it's also really good for friendships, that we need to just change our way of looking at things. Especially if our young person might be in some sort of friendship or relationship that you're not happy with or is a bit toxic. I think it's really important to not ever, ever, ever put down your children's friendships with other people, because it is their lifeblood. So instead of doing that, it's looking at what are they getting out of that friendship? Why do they need that? Are they missing something else from life? And that's why they're hanging with those people. And how do I, instead of ever saying anything, it's how do I scaffold from the bottom to maybe have them get whatever they're getting from that toxic friendship somewhere else? Have a think about those chemicals that are out of balance as well. So how do I maybe bring others in? Do I replace that with sports or some other activities or something like that? But never go on for the dagger with the friendships with them, because then you'll block them off. Another really good one with parenting for young people is having a look at what is important to them for a friend. So having them have a look at that completely neutrally, not that friendship that you're in, but what do you value in a friendship? And then get them to ask themselves, am I giving that in a friendship as well? So what qualities do they bring and what qualities do their friends bring as well? So sometimes that helps to actually go, actually, there's not many qualities that friends bring. So having them actually realise that maybe there's other ways to look at friendships. Let's skip through these ones. So this one here, I am seeing more and more and more young people grow up with very rarely getting rejected from parents, just saying no. But I think the power of being rejected is really, really good, especially when they're young, because what it does is it teaches them that they've got this angry feeling or they don't like being told no, but they're under your roof still and you are helping them through that emotion. And if they can learn to be rejected, and I love all these sort of qualities up here of being rejected, that you can teach them that it's a good thing to be rejected, but hearing the word no and then analysing how you feel about that word and helping them to work through that, but also teaching them the power of saying no to other people. Because what that does is teach them that when someone says no, they're actually being honest. So they're actually a really good friend if someone says no to you. And the power of saying no is something that then they can take right on into their teenage years. And if you start thinking about sex, consent, drugs, alcohol, if they have understood how they can easily say no and they can hear no from someone else, they're going to use that skill in some really big stuff in life. So I think trying to do that in a soft way and bringing it into life as a conscious parenting thing is a really important thing as well, because it comes into friendships big time. So if a friend says no to you, it's actually because they're being a good friend. They're being honest with you potentially. I'm not going to go too much into this, but 1 in 4 young Australians are being bullied still. And it's big and it's really, 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 really important to not put our heads in the sand about. And I think there's heaps of resources out there on bullying, but I think really important to teach your young people the different types of bullying so they recognise that bullying is happening. Teach them what to do with it, so that how do I recognise if someone's just being mean to me or is it bullying? So it's got to be that it is ongoing, it's with intent and it's repeated. So they're the 3 criteria. And teaching them who to go to and what to do about that if it's happening. And does everyone know about eSafety Australia? If you've got kids and you've got kids on social media, eSafety Australia is the best organisation to support you in any type of online stuff. So really good. Have a look at it. It's got some great stuff on it. Peer group pressure, I've kind of touched on this one here, but sometimes it is really, really hard to recognise. And I think, again, that power, and I really love this analogy here. This is my best image, I think, of just stepping away from peer group pressure. The power in that is really profound. So, and also that learning to say no with no emotion. When I had my teenager was going through, say, having all the drugs and alcohol, and he wasn't, but it was all at the parties, we practiced saying no and just staring at me and not giving me any emotion. And it was really good. So when he got to parties and he didn't want drugs or alcohol, no one pressured him because he gave nothing. But it's a skill that not all of us are really good at. So give no excuses. It's just no, with nothing more for them to grab onto or latch onto. So I think that, again, with peer group pressure is really important. Even though our young people, they know about love, they've loved us, but the love of a romantic kind is a really, really, really new and different love for our young people to be experiencing, and a really hard one to navigate. In the grade 5 and 6s, every single year, the kids are asking me more and more and more about crushes and what do we do with crushes and how do we work with this thing of because not only with love, there's always going to come all these other emotions like jealousy and FOMO, and they're big. So it's understanding that crushes are a normal part of life. And when I talk about crushes to the young people, it's one of my favourite little times that I talk about them. I always say to them, it's okay to have a crush. In fact, it's really cool to have a crush. And you can see them all go bright red. You can see them all looking at each other in the class of who they've got a crush on. But I say it's completely normal. It's your body learning this brand new emotion, a feeling that you've never had before. And how cool is that? And then I say to them, just enjoy it. Enjoy that new feeling that you're having, because you actually don't have to do anything with it. You can just enjoy the feeling. And then when I tell them sometimes, like, you realise that people have crushes on people like Justin Bieber or whatever that you're never, ever going to meet. It's the same feeling that you're getting, that you're completely in love with this person on a poster. And they're like, oh, yeah. So I said, yeah, just enjoy it. So I think it's a really important one to recognise that they're going to have them. And it's enjoy it, and you don't have to do anything about it if you don't want to. But it is one of the world's strongest emotions. So it's about learning how to navigate it. Now, this is in the handouts. This is one of the best tools. I think I use this tool, and I have my friends remind me to use this tool all the time. When our young people's worlds are completely out of control, which they are so often, sometimes we can just break it down into what they can control. So I think it's really important here when it comes to friendships is to go, okay, what is out of my control is the actions of what my friends are doing. So if a friend's ignoring them, that goes in the not in my control. But what is in my control in that situation with a friendship, and what is in my control is to still be kind, is to maybe approach that person and say, hey, I've just noticed you're not spending a lot of time with me. If someone's being mean in a friendship, that is out of the control circle, but what can I do in that situation? So it's kind of like breaking down that problem and helping our young people to realise that when things are out of their control, they've got to just put them in a little balloon and blow them away. Just concentrate on the things in relationships and friendships that are in control. So that tool's up the back. I just love this one here because I think it's a really important tool to teach our young people, and something my mum threw at me constantly whenever there was something. It was always just like, well, what is your responsibility in this? What do you need to do in this situation? But realising that happiness has got to come from themselves, not reliant on others, and what they do in life it's got to come from them, not relying on other people, because we can't rely on other people. And it's in a nice way, but look in the mirror and say, I am responsible for my happiness and me, and try to not have other people, them rely on other people. I think this is a really nice one to finish on almost. But our young people really are struggling out there in this world. They're grappling with hormones, they're grappling with new emotions, peers, people, media. There's a huge amount going on inside. Don't shy away from it. Don't fight them with it. The young person's not going away. This is a phase that they're going to go through, but we can work with that phase if we can take on a few tips and tricks. But the underlying with the whole thing is none of us are perfect. Our young people aren't perfect. We're not perfect, but we're all trying to do this together. And I think that if we can just keep those connections with our young people, and then it'll help us to remember that the biggest thing is we need to be loving them and have them know that they're loved, not always fixed. And then we can all sort of be imperfect in this little world together.